So, hello, my name is Shona Hunter and I'm a paper conservator at the National Library of Scotland, so an interloper amongst you imaging specialists. But this is Clara Molina Sanchez, founder and director of Spectrum Heritage. In this presentation, we're going to discuss a recent project that we collaborated on. At the heart of the project is an object which has literary, artistic, national and social significance. However, it was constructed from humble corrugated cardboard. The object was treated by one of my colleagues, conservator Gordon Yeoman. I got involved with the project last year when the new V&A in Dundee sent us a loan request. That request turned into an opportunity for the library's digital and conservation departments because it resulted in the creation of a suite of 3D digital models. And before I hand over to Clara, who will describe how the models were made, first I'll provide you with a little bit of information about the object and how it ended up at the library. Designed as a giant pop-up book, and I mean giant, the stage set was created by the contemporary and I think stylish Scottish artist John Byrne. It's the original scenery for John McGrath's play, The Cheviot, the Stag and the Black Oil. The play tells the story of Scotland's social and economic history, from the Highland clearances to the discovery of North Sea oil. It was the first play to be performed by the group known as 784 Scotland, a group renowned for its progressive left-wing outlook. The company's name came from a statistic that claimed 7% of the population in the UK owned 84% of the country's wealth. In 1973, the group toured Scotland with a popular and influential production. At that point, the stage set was nothing more than a functional prop, but it's since evolved into an important piece of memorabilia. In addition, it's also Scotland's largest book. It was acquired by the library in 2009 after being discovered in the attic of a small museum in the Highlands. Despite its huge scale and dilapidated condition, the stage set was stored rather than scrapped. You could say that its survival is a testament to its status as a unique cultural artifact, something that people have consistently recognised as worth keeping. It was felt that the library was an appropriate custodian for what remained of the big book because we already held the 784 Scotland archive. In addition, it's interesting to note that after the recent political referendums on Scottish independence and Brexit, Scottish interest in this play has really been revived. So the stage set has a front and a back cover and 5 pages or openings. Each opening is furnished with a group of cardboard pop-ups. The pop-ups are hinged at the base with tape and were originally raised using ropes. Although the system appears to have been quite complicated, there was no trickery involved, as the mechanism would have been totally visible to the audience. Reminiscent of a children's picture book, the naive painterly quality is also a deliberate part of the play's styling. The set once included an oil rig, but this pop-up has not survived. What did survive of the book is too large to be consulted in our reading rooms, and the library does not have a suitable space in which to display the object on a permanent or semi-permanent basis. Previously, consultations have taken place in our extremely busy boardroom. As with any pop-up book, the movable parts are vulnerable to damage. Consequently, turning the pages requires expertise and careful consideration. Therefore, to minimise handling, displays have been restricted to a single opening. As a result, people have been unable to read the book from beginning to end. And our first attempt to solve that problem was a short film showing each of the pages being turned, and that's available to view on YouTube. It has a natty soundtrack and some excerpts from the 1974 BBC film too, which I won't play for you now. You have to look later. On arrival at the library, the extensive wear and tear was clear to see. The spine was exposed and the sewing had deteriorated. The corners and edges were bruised and many of the pop-ups had become totally detached. Basically, it no longer functioned as a book or a stage set. It required structural repairs to enable the piece to be exhibited. In 2010, during a panel discussion at the library, members of the original cast revealed that the set had been strapped to the roof of the company's van to transport it around the country during the original tour. So it's safe to say it endured a lot of handling as it was transferred between venues, and the rooftop travel exposed it to some of Scotland's famously good weather. Its tatty appearance, however, was also due to the unstable nature of the materials that were used to construct the set. However, remarkably, the painted surfaces were in pretty good condition. After assessing the item, the conservators suggested a course of treatment. Commissioned by the library, the work was actually carried out by Downey, Allison and Downey, a bindery which is located in Glasgow. The work was outsourced as the Conservation Department did not have the time or space to tackle the project in-house, before I came into post. John Allison, you can see on the left there, and his team gave the set a new spine and attempted to consolidate the pop-ups. Given its dilapidated condition, a few alterations were necessary. However, the treatment we thought was ethically acceptable because the stage set had undergone numerous running repairs during the original tour, many of which involved duct tape. The initial conservation work was completed in order to resuscitate the object structurally. No attempts have been made to in-paint any of the losses. Furthermore, stains and old repairs have been deliberately preserved as evidence of the book's travels throughout the land whose story it was intended to tell and whose story it's now kind of a part of. However, some of the hinges had failed, and when and where this has happened, the pop-ups were reattached with strips of aerolinen, which you can see being applied here. To keep the floor of each page level, foam mattresses were placed underneath the boards. Essentially, these function a bit like a traditional book wedge. To enable the book to be displayed in a gallery setting, perspex rods were added to make the pop-ups self-supporting. However, the cottage on page 2 tended to pitch forwards. As the rod system wasn't enough, twine was attached to the corners, a bit like the guy ropes on a tent. The new supports were basically designed to be as unobtrusive as possible. In 2011, the stage set was displayed as part of a temporary exhibition at the library. Then, in 2018, a curator from the new V&A in Dundee sent us a loan request. She'd hoped to display the stage set in the museum's Scottish Design Gallery. As part of the loan agreement, the V&A agreed to fund a jointly funded project that would use photogrammetry to create a suite of 3D models. So, yes, we got rid of it and we got models. The digital department at the library had been searching for items from the collection that would be interesting to capture in 3D. And when they learned that the stage set was going on loan, they realised that it was an ideal candidate. Spectrum Heritage was appointed to photograph the stage set and deliver the 3D models. Based in Scotland, Clara and her team have a background in conservation, archaeology, and computer science. The company mantra is, technology should be used to service heritage and not the other way around. And this attitude was reassuring to the Conservation Department. We knew that we could trust Clara's team because they understood the fragility and the irreplaceable of this unique and rather unusual object. As a large space was required to capture the stage set, we turned to the National Galleries of Scotland and specifically to their large sculpture store on the outskirts of Edinburgh. Here, Clara and her team photographed the stage set from every conceivable angle. And it's at this point I will hand over to Clara, who will tell you a bit more about that process.
Thank you, Shana. And thank you for the organization for the sweeties. I hope that sugar is helping everyone to stay awake. So today I'm going to talk about the digitization process, the challenges we face, and what we are currently doing with the data. So the first time I saw I had a meeting with the National Library in Scotland. They showed me a few photographs of the Cheviot book. But for us, it was extremely difficult to understand the size of it. So very soon after, we arranged a meeting to see the live book. And 4 people show up to move it and to open it. So that's the moment we realized how big it was. It was absolutely massive. So this photo gives you a reference of the size of it. So it became immediately obvious that the data capture was going to be a little bit more complicated than we predicted. It was completely different from any object we digitized before, and in the last few years, we digitized hundreds of them. it was a massive challenge, but it was very, very exciting. We wanted to create a 3D model that we could explore every single inch in very, very high detail. But when the library asked us if that was possible, I said yes, but we were not completely sure. So during our first visit, we took quite a few photos to do some tests, and after a few trials, we were quite confident that we could achieve the accuracy that we wanted. In the left side, you can see the first trial. So at this stage, it was the time to start planning. And this stage was completely crucial because the Chibi book was going to go to the V&A for 25 years. So we have one chance to capture it, so there was absolutely no room for error. Like you can see on the right side is some sketches we did to try to start planning. And the one on the top, the cottage, you can see is fairly easy to digitize because it's just one panel. But however, the one on the bottom, I don't know if you can see it from the bottom. So the stag, it has many panels, they are overlapping together and they are really, really close together. So it's quite difficult to get into the corners, and it was fairly challenging to light it. So when we started planning, we encountered quite a few challenges that we needed to grapple with. So I'm going to show you what was that. So the first one was the general size of the object. As you can see, it's really, really big. Just to give you a nice reference. So this is like a aerial view of one of the pages. This is the cottage, and that line represents the length of the book. That's about 3 meters long. That tiny dot that I don't know if you can see, that's the thickness of the page. Here you go, that's the page. So you can see the difference between the thickness and the general size of the object is really, really big. And this is a very important factor for us. So the pages are flat surfaces, they are full of colors, so this is fairly straightforward to digitize with photogrammetry. However, the edges are very intricate, very thin, and extremely small compared to the rest of the object. So we were not very sure if we could capture it. One of the first questions we had to ask ourselves is if we have, for any of you who have done photogrammetry, so if you had two flat surfaces and they had to be joined by a very thin line, sometimes get complicated. So we needed to run some tests to be sure. And normally the software recommends you to have a 60% overlap between photos to find common points. So that really, really thin line, that was all we had to capture. So we needed to make sure to capture a huge amount of photographs to capture absolutely all the detail, but also to make possible the alignment. The second challenge was the height. So some of the pages were nearly 3 meters high, so a camera rig wouldn't work. We were thinking about a ladder, and that could work in the pages that they were, well, the panels that were closest to the edge, but not the ones in the center. We thought about scaffolding, but that was not possible for many reasons, especially for the lighting. So we had to get a little bit creative. The third challenge was the actual shape of the object. So you can see here, some of the cardboards are really, really close together, and some of them are actually overlapping. So to get into all the little corners and to light it, it was extremely challenging. And to be able to capture the ones that were right in the center, it was really, really difficult because obviously we cannot stand on top of the book. So once again, we had to get creative. And the last challenge, as Shona was mentioning before, this book was not conceived to be over-supportive. So any single vibration on the floor will move the book and could cause quite a lot of problems with the data processing part. So we had to make sure that we have a very good floor system, and we were very lucky because this was captured at the National Museum of Scotland, and they have a concrete floor, so that was sorted. So to be able to overcome all those problems, we found a couple of tools that they were extremely useful and actually saved the day. So the first one is a 4-meter boom that help us to take the photographs in between the panels. So you can see some photos in here, actually getting really close to the border on top, and the ones above the panel. So actually we could capture everything. The second tool was a 7-meter telescopic pole. This allowed us to have an aerial view, but also to get really, really close to to the higher parts of the panel, especially in the Indian, that was like over 3 meters high, and it was extremely thin. So after 5 days of photogrammetry, over 1,000 images per page, and way over a terabyte of data, everything went really well. The data capture was successful, and we needed to go back to the office and see what we could do with over 10,000 photographs. So the first trial was with Agisoft, Photoscan at the time, Metashape I think is now. Unfortunately, Agisoft did not align the front and the back of the panels really well. So we had to go to use reality capture, and actually did a wonderful job. So we decided to go with the software. The real challenge came when we tried to align the cover from the back. So basically we processed each model separately, but we wanted to have a real view and turn the object over, especially online. So we wanted to attach the back to each scene. The problem was every single time one page was turned, the panels were loose, so they will end up in a completely different position. So when we started overlapping things, it was a big problem. The way we sorted is keeping the top and just sacrificing the very edge of the book, and we had to do a little bit of editing on the geometry of the 3D model. But these are the final models, and we were very, very pleased with the results. So one of the main goals of the project was to make the book accessible online. So all the pages are accessible in Sketchfab. These are obviously an optimized model. So the big models, the National Library has it in archive. And before I hand it over to Shauna, I would like to show you what we're currently doing with the data. So at Spectrum Heritage, we like to do 3D, obviously, but we want to do it in a more meaningful way. So I'm a conservator myself, so I'm very interested in using 3D to visualize conservation needs and treatments. So how many conservators we have in the room? Okay, so you all have seen a conservation report. They are lengthy, very technical, and not really accessible. So conservation is actually something that we want to be able to show, and it's part of the story. So we created this, what we call it a 3D documentation, 3D conservation map. And basically we picked 3 important stages of the story of the book. In purple you have all the repairs going from 1973 to 2009. That is basically all the repairs done when the book was on tour. In green you have the work done by the woodbinder, and in red the National Scotland repairs. So this is a very easy way to visualize a few things that once we sit down with Shauna and we wanted to do this 3D model and add layers of information, we took quite a few hours going through hundreds of photographs, going through the report, and it was, for us as an outsider, it was quite complicated to understand. So we thought putting this information into a 3D model would make it much easier to see. So the final aim is to document all the alterations the book have suffered, and also to keep adding layers of information so people can read the story in a better way. So this is a great example of how a collaboration between departments is extremely important. I know this has been mentioned in the last couple of days quite a lot, but yeah, let's do 3Ds but with a meaning. Okay.
Just to conclude, I have a few things to say, but also to pick up on your point, our original condition reports for this consist of 7 PowerPoint files with a couple of hundred images, and quite a lot of them are macro photographs, details of the damages, which are nice because they show the damage, but it's difficult to pinpoint where those macro images actually come from, so this is really useful. Anyway. So the conservation element of this project did actually come as a secondary benefit, albeit a really important and useful one. From the outset, we were keen to collaborate with Clara and her team because we understood the value of 3D models. I'll cover for you, I'll just keep going, for identifying recording damage and deterioration. The stage set was couriered to the new V&A in Dundee in August 2018. where it was set up on a bespoke plinth, and it will remain there for the next 25 years. During the installation, the conservator referred to the 3D models on a portable tablet. And going forward, we plan to map the set's ongoing deterioration issues, just as Clara pointed out. Essentially, we hope to develop the project further by applying new layers of information to the existing models as these layers of information become available. So 25 years is quite a long time for a light-sensitive paper-based object to be on display. Of course, the light levels are being carefully controlled and monitored. We will take readings over the course of the display as soon as we're able to buy a portable spectrophotometer. And we plan to use the 3D models to record the site of where we do the spectrophotometer readings. In an interview with the artist, he confirmed that he'd used, what was his name? He confirmed that he'd used water-based poster paints and oil pastels to create the scenes, materials known to be light-sensitive. During the loan, each opening will be displayed for a maximum of 5 years, though not necessarily consecutively. This is double our usual recommendation. However, we've accepted this because it's unlikely that the stage set will be displayed elsewhere afterwards. The V&A loan is, in a way, an opportunity for the stage set to perform its swan song. In the interview, which I managed to corner 10 minutes before the press launch interview with him, the stage set itself was upstairs, and the artist agreed to speak to me for 10 minutes beforehand. And at the start of the interview, he said, "Oh, Sean, I can't remember anything about what I used or how I made the book. It was 40 years ago." But then I showed him Clara's 3D models, and as well as being extremely impressed by the models, that brought back a flood of memories, and he was able to tell me lots about the materials that he'd used to make the book. Okay.
This must be the last slide.
Okay, sure. I'll just quickly go to the end bit then. Okay. So the stage set may have left the library, but our preservation work, both traditional and digital, has ensured that it's more accessible than ever. As Scotland's story continues to be shaped, the conservators at NLS will continue to preserve and present that story page by giant page. And to accomplish this, we'll continue to form effective partnerships with contractors like Clara and her team at Spectrum Heritage, and with sister organisations like the V&A in Dundee and the National Galleries of Scotland. To look at our 3D models, please visit the library's website. Thanks.
Thank you. Sorry to cut you short, but we have 2 more presentations waiting for us. I want to invite Suzanne and Carola for the second presentation.
I'm not a hero, so. I was the one who screamed.
Make sure it stays plugged in.
All right. Thank you, Cecile. I think our heartbeat was already high because of the nerves for our presentation, but Carola's is now even higher off the mouse. But okay. I am Suzanne Smelt. I'm a paintings conservator in the Rijksmuseum. And next to me is Carola van Wijk. She is a photographer in the Rijksmuseum. And we will give this joint presentation today. We would like to tell you more about conservation photography in the Rijksmuseum. And conservation photography has some slightly different specifications. I, as a conservator, like to have it in high resolution. And we also think it's important that images have some scientific value to it. But I also think that not only conservators benefit from these images, but also curators and scientists and also the public. And we think actually that everybody should do it, high resolution photography. And of course, it's not easy, but we want to show you the challenges we faced and how we were trying to solve them. So first, I'd like to introduce the paintings to you and the project. So in July of this year, we will start with the research and possible treatment of the night watch. And this research will be conducted by an interdisciplinary team consisting of conservators, scientific researchers, curators, and photographers, all from different departments in the Rijksmuseum. And this research will take place in the Gallery of Honor in front of the public. Rembrandt has painted this painting in 1642 for the Kloveniersdoelen in Amsterdam, and it shows the militia company of District Number 2 under the command of Captain Frans Banning-Kok. It's actually Rembrandt's largest painting, and it's the centerpiece of our collection in the Rijksmuseum. Basically, the Gallery of Honor was especially designed by it at the end of the 19th century by Pierre Cuypers. The painting is quite big. It's more than 17 square meters, and that shows immediately one of the challenges of this project, the amount of data we will gather, and challenges related to that, the processing of the data and the stitching and the registration. We want to share with you the lessons we've learned with the photography of Martin and Opium, and the challenges we faced with these two paintings. Rembrandt painted these two portraits in 1634, and in 2016 they were acquired by the Dutch state and the French Republic. For 1.5 years, the paintings were researched and restored in the paintings department of the Rijksmuseum.
Since 2007, I photographed the paintings for the conservation department. All paintings are photographed before, during, and after treatment. And for years it was more or less the same, until the paintings of Martin and Opium came along, and our colleague, Robert Erdman, senior scientist, showed us new possibilities. This was in 2016. It became a real cooperation between conservation and image department. And from that moment on, we photographed a lot of paintings in tiles instead of a few details. We also made a change in the information we wrote in the metadata. This process is still ongoing. And we photographed both paintings in visible light, UV, infrared, refractography, and transmitted infrared.
Now I've switched to the curtain viewer, and this is a viewing tool designed by Rob Erdman. It runs live through the internet, and this shows some of the different images we've been taken from Martin, actually. You can, here I show you the X-ray, which fades to the XRF scans we've made of this painting, to the infrared reflectogram, the visible light images, and here at the end you will see the UV image. The viewer is not distracted by text, but if you want, you can show text so you can see what the images are. And this curtain viewer allows, as you can see, for a seamless switching between the images. So this is a really beautiful tool for us to study the paintings more in depth. And these images were also great for me to use in the studio when we were restoring the paintings. We had a big screen in the studio with the images on it. So during treatment, we could easily switch to the painting in UV radiation without actually putting UV radiation on the painting itself.
These are different stages of treatment. It's before and after varnish removal, and then also one of these are saturated with a solvent, and again varnish removal, and the last after treatment. These are all overviews, details, styles, and in all different stadia of treatment. And each painting has now 2,507 images in total. The tiles are grouped in what we call sets, and each set get a number, and from all these sets we make a PDF format. So from all the images it will later be clear that which tile belongs where in the puzzle, and both paintings in the end will have 15 sets. And each set will have 242 tiles or less.
It's not working that well. I think the Wi-Fi is a bit slow.
Yeah, yeah.
But basically you can see how easy it is to do a varnish removal by just sliding your mouse over the image. Everybody can do the job.
So, as I said, it was the first time we photographed a painting in so many tiles. 242 tiles of each 1200 pixel per inch. We managed to do this with a famous imaging frame designed by our colleague Rick. He developed this one for the Bosch research project. It was equipment needed to travel. So the painting is on the easel. The whole painting is evenly lightened, and the camera had to be moved manually in front of the painting. We faced some practical problems. We couldn't make multi-shots because of the movement of the frame, and because we had to move the camera manually, tile by tile. The distances between the tiles were never exact. And to repeat exactly the photography in the different phases during treatment is very difficult, or I would say impossible. It's heavy work. For a lot of rows, I'm not that tall, so I had to go up and down the stairs, move the camera. Each camera movement I had to loosen and fasten 2 handles. So for 242 tiles, it was heavy. So it is useful, but it can be improved, and for a painting as for the night watch, it's not to be used. It's not going to work.
So here on the left side you can see an overview of all of the images taken of one painting, and we aim for 20 to 25% of overlap. And on the right image you can see a zoom in of the left image, and where it's darker blue there's more overlap between the images. And Rob Erdman stitches these images for us, but he stitches differently. He stitches on top of an overall image instead of overlapping the 2 images. And the red lines you can see here, they show the recognizable features in the overlapping images, which were found by the computer. So the more lines, the better. But as you can remember the paintings of Martin and Opien, the background and the clothes they were wearing are extremely dark. And for the computer, it was extremely difficult to find recognizable features in these areas. So that's also the problem with the imaging frame we found. You can see it here at the bottom. It was difficult for us to take consistent rows and columns, and which of course makes also the stitching difficult. So we have a solution for that. We ordered a computer-controlled motorized easel, which is really fancy, I would say. Carola will show it in the workshop to you tomorrow. It's in our ateliergebouw in the basement. But for the night watch, we came up with a different solution, which we will show later to you. And here's already an image we made with this imaging easel, and you can see how nicely consistent the rows and the columns are, and also the overlap between the images.
This is a test. So last summer, we performed some photography tests on the night watch. So a team of photographers, my colleagues Henny van Beek and Rick Rijn-Goting, and we formed a team. So the three of us, we have a lot of experience in photography of two-dimensional objects, and we work close together with Suzanne and Robert. And, oh, the Martin, yeah. So we did some tests for the 1250 pixel per inch images, and this was two rows of the painting of these images. If we do this, and we want to do the whole painting, we need to take 648 images. But here you can see also a problem, and this is, well, we think we have to polarize it. So that's what we, later on, we tested that later. We can show it so later.
I don't have this in a curtain view, unfortunately, but...
Oh. So this is, oh, these are, yes.
Yeah.
Yes. This summer, Robert said 1250 is nice, but what if you go closer? And we go as close as possible. So we borrowed the Hasselblad H6D 400 multi-shot, and we go again in the evening in the gallery, and we went to close as we could shoot 5,340 pixel per inch images. So each tile is only 5.5 centimeter by 4.1, or 2.16 by 1.6 inches. This is what they want.
Yes, I want this, definitely, yeah.
But if you want to do this for the whole painting, we need to take 11,845 images with an overlap of 20%. And we use cross-polarization by this.
So, of course, with this high-resolution photography, you have even more extreme challenges. And one of the challenges is the focus of the images. And Rob has designed a toolkit for the NIP2 software, which is software by the National Gallery in London. It's basically a combination of a spreadsheet, as you can see, and a photo editor. Wait. It's called focus metric. And of course, it's really important to see if your camera is completely parallel to your painting in order to gain focus of your images. And it's also quite difficult, Carola found out, to see if the image if the image is in focus. So here you can see two of the images of the two rows of the night watch. And if you look like this, you think it looks quite good. It looks quite in focus. But then if I show the focus metric tool, which you need to read like light means in focus and dark means bad focus. And you can see that especially in the cracks in the image. So cracks in a painting are nice features where you can focus your equipment on. You can see here that the cracks are white. So you immediately see that the top image is in focus and the bottom image is not in focus. And then when you zoom in, you can actually see it in the real image. So you see there is a slight difference in focus. So in order to perform this high-resolution imaging in the Gallery of Honor in front of the public, we designed, together with Segula Technologies, an imaging frame for the night watch. With this imaging frame, the whole painting can be reached, and the light lights will travel with the camera. And the camera can also be rotated in a pitch and yaw movement. There is also a possibility to scan the painting in the Z-axis, which enable depth stacking. So the imaging frame will not only be used for the Hasselblad camera, but also for the Osiris and the Apollo camera, 2 hyperspectral cameras, and the 3D imaging system, which will be performed by the TU in Delft. So they designed separate interface plates for the individual optical devices. The system will have a stop and stare operation movement, but also a continuous line scan. And the system can be parked at the top, not in front of the painting, so we can work on the painting. And during the work, the painting can also be visualized again during treatment and also after conservation treatment.
Yes. This research and treatment of the night watch could not be possible without our sponsors. Thank you.
Roy.
Oh, wow, I get to use the box. This is a question about the imaging on the night watch that's going to happen. I'm wondering if you've done any kind of analysis, since you've got this tool that can tell you about, sharpness, and if you've done anything comparing the cross-polarization versus not cross-polarizing. Because in my experience, I find that with cross-polarization on paintings, it gets blurrier. So I'm wondering if you've looked at that at all.
Not yet.
The image that I just showed of the small copy of the night watch was stitched yesterday night. So it's brand new, and we're doing this exactly because we think we're going to reveal all of the problems, well, some of the problems that we'll face in the real night watch imaging. But that's good to know, thank you. We'll definitely look at that. And
are you going to be measuring surface normal while you're at it, since you're only going to get at this, a limited number of time?
There is a separate 3D imaging campaign that's being conducted by TU Delft, but that will be much later. So okay. I think that by doing I basically can tell you something about the shape from how different the image looks when you're super close and when you're far away, because a mountain of paint has a perspective to it, but it's not validated, not very accurate, so not yet.
With these files, when you're getting to these massive sizes, how are you saving them both for the preservation archival one and online? I'm assuming it's either like a pyramidal TIFF or a JPEG 2000 or something, but also just TIFF falls apart over 2 or 4 gigabytes. I'm just curious, like, what your formats are for saving these monster files.
Well, TIFF falls apart if you don't have the big TIFF flag set, but 4 of the images I showed you today are 250 gigabytes plus, and they're TIFF files, 16-bit TIFF. And then for the online presentation, yeah, these curtain viewers are based on the OpenSeaDragon file format underneath everything. So yeah, it's basically folders of tiles at different resolutions in JPEG format. So for archival, it's a totally different thing than for the online presentation. Online, it's sRGB because it's still the lowest common denominator and it's 8 bits. For archival, it's 16-bit TIFF, ECI, RGB, V2, color space.
So I have 2 more questions. Oh, 3. Oh my God. Because it's, we still have we have to get out of the building at 6, so. And we have to have drinks first. And make a group photo. So 3 very fast questions.
Okay, so I noticed there's some Pico Light electronic flash. Are you still using that? Because we find they kind of overheat very quickly when doing lots of shots. And I'm wondering about net light exposure, and one of the talks about maybe using the LED flash. With so many captures, are we hitting it with too much light? And are those lights staying, are they going to survive the trip when you do the full night watch?
We've never done the night watch before, so we don't know yet. With the copy, it managed very well, but
It may be something
Well, we
to
made
consider.
sure that we have spare sets of a lot of stuff.
No, I'm just saying, it may be interesting as you build this out, that you may look at some of those other functions at the same time.
We don't use the modeling light with the photography because we don't need it at all. The pico lights are not so hot then. It's not at full power, I guess. Yeah.
Okay, I'm
No.
going to cut you short. I have one other question there.
Thanks. Question for Robert. I know that a lot of that is online, especially the Bosch project, but how much of what you've shown us today is open access, available online for the public consumption, research, and where can we find it?
None of it. And this is a very interesting discussion. The museum has not yet decided, basically, what form the images will take. And at the moment, the real issue is that our media bin system accepts images of 2 gigabytes and smaller. And now, if you take a single 6-shot Hasselblad 400, that's 2.4 gigabytes for a single photo. So we do not yet have a way to present it to the public. So certainly we're open, we're the Rijksmuseum, so this will be open someday, but I don't know what route that will take.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, I'm going to leave it with that. Although I think, I can remember you once said, Robert, in preparation of this conference, or even the one before, as it where's the end? Because we want to have a conference where people are able to jump on a moving train, and you said, well, this is not a train anymore, this is a bullet. And I think the last presentations, the last 3 presentations in this session were a nice example for that. Where's the... No, not the mouse. This way. I have some things I wanna, this one of course, but I also want to, for those of you going to the fully overbooked, all of them, most of them fully overbooked workshops tomorrow, please read the practical information in your program book. We will gather for every workshop, except the first one from Scott, in the foyer here in the auditorium. And there are assistants who will guide you to every workshop. As you can see, so this is, you can see how complicated the organization is. You have seen Sandra sweat during those 2 days on all the schedules of the workshops. So the atelier building, where the cross is where you gather for the first workshop half an hour earlier of Scott. The rest of it is at the blue meeting point in the foyer, and that's 3 times. So we come to a close. I want to invite Richard as well, as my partner in crime from AFAB. And this is actually for the ones who not do the workshops, our last chance to thank you all for being here and to attend this conference. I want to start first with an enormous big hand for Sandra and Sandra, and I want to invite them up here. If it wouldn't been for them, I think we didn't have a successful conference. I also want to thank the Rijksmuseum because they really believe in this conference, and they granted me for 3 times permission to organize this conference. And during the opening, Erik, one of the directors, whispered to me that he had a great idea for a 4th edition. So I think we will have one in 21. I also want to thank all the members of the Image Department, the team who has been hosting you during these days. And while there was a lot of pressure on them for a Night Watch project, a production project for new storage, they still found the time to cooperate and to prepare for workshops and lectures. So I want to have a big hand for my Image Department team as well. And last but not least, we will gather for a group's portrait before drinks. So when you leave the auditorium, please go immediately to the atrium and then we can make a group portrait. But before that, I want all the workshop hosts and presenters of the last days and tomorrow here to the stage, because I have a little present for you all. Because I think it's also thanks to all the presentations and workshops, and there are a lot of presenters. This is a success. So there's as you can see, there were lots of presenters and workshop hosts. Well,
Thank you. It was lovely.
it is just a joke, a really Dutch joke. But anyhow, guys, this is actually a quite impressive sight. This is a full stage with all of you. Thank you very much. Enjoy the drinks.
Can I add one thing? I think we ought to say thank you to Cecile as well for making this all happen. So.
Enjoy your drinks. Enjoy the dinner tonight at the museum, the Allard Pierson Museum. And enjoy tomorrow. And hopefully we see you in 2021. So make sure you have your budget in order and be in time to register. Bye.